Man, this stage is great! Sonic Forces probably needs no introduction by now. It's been the franchise's favorite punching bag ever since it came out, as the final product was nothing short of underdeveloped and disappointing. Look him in the eyes and tell him you had fun. You can't. Stripping away all of the depth, polish, and nuance that made the Boost gameplay so fun, what we thought would be Generations 2 ended up more like a Colors tech demo, where you boosted down straight lines, jumped and homing attacked a few things for no more than a collective 2 hours before saying to yourself, wait, that was it? The story was nothing, Green Hill fatigue was setting in, classic Sonic suffered identity theft, and the 4 years in between this and Lost World, which was already an unsatisfactory deviation, didn't help its case. Now, I've gone on record before to say that there's a bit more to the game than what that general consensus will lead on to, and I still believe that. I can play this from start to finish and enjoy a couple things about it without being perpetually compelled to shut it off out of boredom. It's not a broken mess, nor is it horribly frustrating, and to me that keeps it from being truly awful. But it is still a far cry to what I look for in a game, and is the definition of mediocre. Sonic Forces Overclocked is a fan-created mod expansion that aims to fix all of these issues, acting as a small sequel. It has a completely original continuation of the story where Infinite and Neo Metal of all characters team up to try and take out Sonic. Considering he just flew away without any fanfare at the end, it was nice to see that get followed up on. 3D animated cutscenes, I imagine, were beyond the scope of the project, so instead we have hand-drawn comic panels, and while that may seem like a compromise, I think that was the next best option. There is some really good artwork in here, combined with effective sound design, screen shake, and background music to where I never felt like I was missing out on too much from it not being animated. Some images were a little blurry, probably because they had to zoom in for effect, but wasn't a big deal. Say hello to Demon Vector. The voice acting also not too shabby. I wasn't rolling my eyes at every other line read. It does still come with a lot of the same trappings that many fandubs do, like over and under delivering certain dialogue, pronunciation issues, slurring of words, etc. Things you wouldn't normally hear in a professional setting that exist in a non-profit vacuum, but even so, still not bad by any means. Charmy, what do you want? As for the writing itself, I thought it was fine. I love the banter between Infinite and Metal. That was by far the highlight for me. Especially the ending where they have a Generations-esque post-credits feud and Metal loses his powers mid-argument so he's unable to talk back. I thought that was charming. The rest of it, though, is a rather trope-heavy series of truncated story beats that you've likely heard before in a lot of other media. Bad guys team up with a new thing that makes them stronger, good guys get beat down, they try fighting them again later, still doesn't work until suddenly they gain the upper hand and win. Oh, we're done. It's like there's a big middle section of the story that we skip through, making it feel like it ends right when it's getting started. Ah, well, still better than the real game, I guess. No! The gameplay is separated into 3 familiar avenues: Boost Sonic, the custom avatar, and the tag team combining them. Classic Sonic has been completely omitted, doesn't even get mentioned, and instantly rates of depression went down. Those levels were panned by almost everyone across the board for their vacuous physics and design. Even though they technically had the least amount of Force's baggage, less automation, and more diverging paths, they fell short in every possible way. Cutting out that weak link makes going from one level to another much more consistent here without any stylistic whiplash or dips in quality. Each level takes place in an old territory from the regular game, only revamped with added visuals, like Lost Valley now being a dismal ash-covered battlefield besmirched by embers and flames. It even opens in Starlight Zone with returning mechanics like the rising stair blocks before transitioning into the Green Hill portion, each equipped with their own music. This is a great example of how revisiting old stages isn't a bad idea anymore. We just don't need to see the same ones over and over. It's repetitive by nature and takes away from the current game's identity. It also shows us how you can take an old stage and make it feel totally fresh. This is Sonic's beloved home turf, and it's in ruins, a story beat that hits way harder now since the terrain is so much more believably devastated, compared to just, putting a bunch of sand everywhere. Which, in all fairness, I think is a nice aesthetic. In fact, I prefer it artistically just because it's more colorful, but Stolen Valley has such a great deal more charisma and a sense of in-universe geography, literally going from one landmark to another mid-stage, that it sets the tone of the narrative way better than Sandhill ever could. If a group of fans setting fire to Green Hill in their mod doesn't send the message, I don't know what will. Chemical Plant's outdoor areas I thought were distinct enough to stand on their own without being mistaken for the original, but Freight Frenzy dials in on what Spaceport laid down by focusing on the transportation aspect of it, with actual trains that you have to dodge, and a completely new section built using the colored shipping containers that used to only be in the background. The Chaotix have also joined you and can be seen popping in here and there. The city is mostly unchanged, as it was already an original location, a beautiful one at that, but they've added more substance to enhance the setting. The lighting is darker, with red and purple instead of orange, infinite creatures causing destruction, and NPCs on the ground fighting against Eggman's robots, reminding us that, oh yeah, there is kind of a war going on. Man, is their aim bad though, no wonder we lost. Mystic Jungle gets 2 areas dedicated to it, one being a frosty environment that once again brings background assets into the foreground, and the other a blazing inferno corrupted by thorny vines. Death Egg's interior has an orange fog of war to indicate an ominous energy source, and the outside was left nearly untouched as it was already one of the best looking environments. Now it's a full-on battlefield with meteors and lasers all over the place. The Eggman Empire Fortress has been tattered and abandoned with all sorts of damaged architecture and fallen ships laying in the background, glossed over with a warm sunset. You even play as Metal Sonic here, but he's kind of having a hard time. Forces at its best was already a good-looking game, something I always gave it credit for, but Overclocked further improves upon that with higher quality textures, more detail, and enhancements to some of the lackluster areas. There are, however, some instances where the art direction can be a little too busy, like Jungle Inferno where you're bombarded by a McDonald's color wheel, or Stolen Valley with its veil of darkness, making it hard to see where you even are in the environment, unable to appreciate the details, which you could do in Lost Valley. City Siege has a similar problem with being so much darker compared to how well lit Sunset Heights was. I get that that's the point, the sky is cloudy and there's a lot of purple energy everywhere, but it makes it hard to see things like incoming obstacles when going so fast, something that didn't happen in the original. The orange also complemented Sonic's lighter hue in the base game much better than the dark blue against a shadowy red-orange landscape. In summary, the game looks good. It was a lot of fun to see how all these familiar locations changed after the events of the main story, and I think they handled the presentation very well, even if the lighting isn't always optimal. And that's not even including all the subtle flourishes like Big the Cat cameos, certain 2D sections, angling the camera to give you a better view of what's up ahead, idle animations like Metal getting freaked out by his spinning hand, how do I stop it? And best of all, there's a Dark Omo Chow to give you hints, and if you attack him too many times with the avatar, he starts to warn you until he finally snaps.
Goodbye. Oh, ouch! You think this is fun,
Wait,
don't you?
what is it? What? Putting all that aside though, it's time to get into what this thing plays like. How does Overclocked feel compared to the original? The controls have been tightened up ever so slightly. Steering left and right is a bit quicker, doesn't feel quite as heavy. The running acceleration has a smoother transition to top speed. The double jump goes a bit higher. And that's about all I could notice. I'm sure there are other tweaks here and there, but if you didn't like how this game controlled before, it's probably not going to impress you now either, even if in a better state. The homing attack is still geriatric and has a hard time locking on. You need to be directly facing the target or else you risk an amnesia attack. Jumping is very stiff, so anytime you get stopped by a block and jump, you may turn to the side where you can't lock on or change direction, and it sucks every time. The chain homing attack that's meant to bring you across a string of enemies usually works, but every so often it'll send you backwards.
Take a look at this tiny place.
One time I didn't even home in and I got bounced backwards instead. Another same thing, only I went straight up, failed, got hit, and failed again. What is our secret handshake? Ironically, the Force's homing attack has potential to be super interactive since you need to turn your body towards the proper target instead of always homing in so long as it's on screen. When the camera's pulled back and everything's in view, it's surprisingly responsive. I can turn all the way around in midair. I could see this being iterated upon to remedy the homing attack chain monotony that we've endured for decades. Alas, that's not what happened, leaving us with a partially unreliable utility. That being said, suboptimal control has never been a reason for me to give up on a game without at least trying to get good at it. And I'm glad I abide by that because I had a really good time with Overclocked. While it may not reach the highs of Unleashed in Generations, there are points where it gets close, giving us a taste of what Forces could have looked like had it been given more care and attention. God, how many times we said that about a Sonic game. The 3 main issues with the core level design were as follows: automation, length, and linearity. It felt like we were auto-boosting down a never-ending series of hallways lasting like 90 seconds apiece, consistently ending right when it seemed like it was getting good. Well, I'm happy to say that 2 of those complaints have been addressed. Automation is significantly cut down on. First off, no QTEs. Every now and then a level would interrupt you to watch a short cutscene where you press a button, and while they were kinda cool, they mainly added insult to injury since the game already had such low interactivity. Overclocked gets rid of them all except for one double boost at the very end, making it a lot more special, and replacing that dead space with real gameplay. The avatar's automatic grappling points are also gone, and they've added a new type that only works if you time the button press when it lights up, similar to the tropical jungle vines. Second, you can wiggle around during most boosting sections. The control doesn't lock you in in place nearly as often or flood the screen with dash panels, so you'll actually have to steer yourself if you want to grab all the rings, which you may want to do now because not only do they factor into the much harder to get S ranks, but like Unleashed in Generations, they fill your boost meter again, something Forces ironically didn't do. Now, running out of boost isn't very common, and it's not like there's anywhere else you can go, but I think it adds just a bit more consideration to these moments, helping them to feel less restrictive. And third, these levels have all been packed with branching paths, shortcuts, and split-second obstacle reaction. Every few seconds, you are presented with an opportunity to cut corners and change course. Jump over the dash pads, get into the hoops, jump to take the high road, use the spring to reach the upper path, jump in more hoops, snag the pulley mid-air, boost around robots to save time instead of homing attacking, jump into another zipline, homing attack this enemy so your air boost can reach the other one. Falling through the floor, yeah, we got that too, don't worry. It is constant activity to keep you engaged, and that's not even the half of it. For example, sliding wasn't something you ever had to do in the retail game, and it's everywhere now, more than any of the other boost games, I want to say. I had some legitimate difficulty adjusting to how often it came up since it went so unused over the last 12 years. You have to train your eyes to always be looking ahead because they're usually well marked with an arrow. Although there are cases where the cluttered presentation and lighting can affect this negatively, like in City Siege where you're going downhill, so the gate up ahead, which is already the same color as everything in the background, gets obscured by the motion blur and speed lines at the top of the screen. Compare this to an earlier part in the same stage where you have a clear shot of it dead center and the difference in clarity is evident. Still, it's good to see this ability come back with such prominent usage. It's a small way of adding variety back into your inputs. Don't know why it didn't work here, but whatever, man, I'm tired. Another frequent dodging technique you'll see is quick stepping. Overclocked loves quick stepping, to a point where it can start to feel like an over-reliance. Stages are often bookended by these, plus a section in the middle with a hearty helping of rail grinding throughout, which is essentially the same thing anyway, so you often end up doing more quick stepping in total than regular gameplay. Now, I don't despise that. I actually like quick stepping in moderation. It's a pure method of focusing on the speed for a minute with everything clearly laid out for you to dodge like a ninja. What was that? And some of these sections are pretty exciting. Dodging geysers on the way to one of the infinite nightmares and then destroying it Perfect Chaos style because these models were originally going to be used for Perfect Chaos back when the game had passion. Avoiding fire from the Angel Island mini-boss, once again, references done right. Dodging laser attacks and electrical beams on the rails, followed by the whole place falling apart. This is where Big is tragically engulfed in flames. Hey there! Ships dropping bombs in front of you while at blistering speeds, narrowly escaping the Death Egg's final assault. These are thrilling set pieces I can rock with. There's just a little too many of them for the amount of content we have. The only ones I straight up don't like are the avatars because he can't boost, leaving them slow and unexciting when there aren't dash panels everywhere. And this is still the Forces engine, so there are times when your inputs, for whatever reason, don't register, so now I gotta hit up Jacoby and Myers. But aside from that, they're all short enough to not overstay, periodically shake up the gameplay, and mark the end of a stage with a spectacular element, helping to give it some more pizzazz and fatten it up to almost an unrecognizable state. Which brings us to the second major complaint: length. The results screen in this game made you feel like a parent whose child just brought home a bad report card.
What is this?
Forces levels were short. We are talking 90 seconds on average with all the automation and QTEs factored in, sometimes even shorter. There would be moments of greatness to get you excited, and then would immediately pass you by, slamming headfirst into the goal shortly after. It was unsatisfying and just flat out unfinished in many regards. It sucked. Overclocked spares no expense in trying to fill that void. Stages took me 3, 4, sometimes approaching 5 minutes on my first playthrough to complete. Even my speed runs, which are pretty well optimized, still ran in the 2-minute range, with the final level over 3. The only short one is the prologue, about 1.5 to 2 minutes, but it's the intro, so it's acceptably smaller. I even stayed up really late one night and got it down to 1:17. I wonder how close to world record that is, because my thumbs are gone. In addition to there being more content overall, the ratio between 2D and 3D gameplay has been turned on its head. Levels are primarily in the third dimension now, with a short 2D section in the middle only lasting around 20 seconds, maybe less if you know the right routes, occupying anywhere from 33 to as little as 9% of a level's runtime. There were only 3 levels in Forces that dared to do that, and surprise, they were all really short. It's not that 2D boost gameplay is bad, it's just the 3D is so fun. There's a larger explorative quality, more directions to go in, and yeah, sometimes it is just straight up better. Who made this? But now that we have a substantial amount of it, I don't mind swapping perspectives here and there because every stage feels complete. There is no "wait, that was it" remark when hitting the results screen anymore. It's gone, kaput, zippo, nada. You even go through the old level designs in between all the new stuff with minor enhancements, And they fit right in. You wouldn't notice if you hadn't played the original. Further proving the point that Forces, as it was, did not feel finished. I mean, just look at how they transformed Luminous Forest. All you did was boost, do a few jumps in 2D, boost more, grind a rail for like a second, snake. Compare that to Eclipse Forest. You start off boosting, but then slide, quick step, jump here for a massive shortcut, jump off this rail for a quick one, homing attack, bouncy vines, a gimmick that applies to the environment, slide here, switch rails for a bit, boost over this guy for a crazy skip, then do the 2D section, and finish with a rail grinding set piece at double the runtime. Pass me the check cause I'm buying. It's night and day, man. They did a fantastic job translating basic into... Yeah, that was pretty good. The only complaint that Overclocked doesn't solve is linearity. Unlike the first two, this ideology wasn't touched upon really at all. The game is still structured like a hallway, boosting down narrow corridors that never open up. Even though there are branching paths and plenty of shortcuts, the branches themselves are still straight lines. And so the way that you cut corners and access these different routes is ultimately a binary selection. You are either presented with a fork in the road where you can go left, right, and sometimes straight, or you'll be running forward and before you go downhill, jump into some hoop or homing target that takes you to the upper path. This is every interaction. Look at City Siege. The level starts with this little lip you can land on or go down for the water spout. From there, jump into this enemy chain to skip the rail for a quick time save, then turn right and take the high road or defy gravity, I don't know, it's a free country. Turn right again for another chain, decide whether you're gonna go straight or left off these rails, then pick left or right for these. Jump to the high road again, jump on this rail, boost over this hill, jump on these rails, hit another enemy chain, jump on more rails after a hill, hit another enemy chain before going down. It's all the same two choices wrapped in different packaging. It's like getting a book for Christmas and then you realize all the other gifts are the exact same shape and size. You're like, oh gee, I wonder. And look, I don't think there's anything wrong with that necessarily. Trying to beat your record is still exhilarating, and you can boil anything down to its basic parts to make it sound boring, but what elevated Generations to that next level was that it did periodically open up with big areas of space to let you move around and breathe. Not just mechanically, but visually too, for the sake of variety. There was platforming, times when you weren't boosting or homing attacking and had to fully control your character in 3D space. Overclocked doesn't have anything like that. It's very much a don't stop, just go attitude with maybe a few screens where there isn't a homing target nearby. And this could have been intentional because they knew that the control wasn't great for it, possibly leading to a better paced product, but even retail Forces had more open areas, so it was kind of disappointing to not see that be integrated at all. What you end up doing a lot more in its place is air boosting. Since Forces added an upwards arc to it that has to be timed quickly or else it goes down, every now and then there will be an essential shortcut that can only be reached with one, or more commonly, it'll be faster to ignore the homing targets altogether and boost past them. And discovering where these tricks are most effective is part of the fun. No, I refuse to move. I know it's not an exact substitute, but honestly, if they had to leave one of the three problems unsolved, I'm glad it was this one, because even though the linearity is limiting, having fully fleshed out stage design that doesn't end premature with a great time attack element made this a very fun, highly replayable experience. Although, not at first, mind you. On my initial playthrough, I wasn't hooked just yet. And this is how it always is. The first run of a Sonic game is either pretty good or fine. Maybe some jank here and there you gotta get used to. It's a little weird. The second playthrough, though, is where it clicks. You're past the growing pains, and now you want to show off. You start immersing yourself in the movement, the tech, and now you can't escape. You're locked in. Levels that were okay became good, and the good ones got even better. The good levels in Forces actually got worse over time. How'd that even happen? Lost Citadel is a great intro to the mod, taking place in a disheveled Mortar Canyon, which was widely considered the game's highlight, so kicking off with it leaves a strong first impression. It's extra cool because in my review of Forces back when it came out, I said that if the game started with Mortar Canyon and then kept building from there, it would have been a lot better, and that's kind of what we got here. The original was an instant icon for its unique downhill structure, beautiful factory aesthetic, and superb music, but was overshadowed by some depressingly lackluster gameplay consisting entirely of boost-to-win ideology that you could beat in under a minute with. Just plowing through hordes of meaningless enemies. How many robot lives must I take? Please, kind ostrich, let me pass and we can avoid this needless bloodshed. You had your chance. Citadel adds a 2D section in the beginning with these bombshells that launch you forward, and floating orb hazards to create a timing challenge. Doesn't get much more video gamey than a moving object that goes back and forth you have to dodge. The big chasm in the middle has some extra towers to navigate, a fallen pillar to prevent you from boosting over this part like before, although you still pretty much can, just not as much. Another timed obstacle, and then one final shortcut at the end before we see the remains of the Death Egg robot where Metal retrieves the Phantom Ruby and he's like, oh shoot, this is nice. It's a very fun opening stage with a lot of little time saves all throughout. Again, I went kind of psycho with the speedrun. However, I would have liked to see more. Out of all the levels here, this is the one that adds the least to what it was based on. The 2D is new, but all the 3D is identical to before with minor alterations, which is not the norm for Overclocked, where you have these huge transformations side by side. So in hindsight, Lost Citadel is a little unfinished when compared to the others, or at least inconsistent with its ideologies. Also, small pet peeve, but in the beginning there's a top, middle, and bottom pathway, but the top is only like 2 seconds faster than the bottom, and I think the reward for staying up there should be a little more significant, just as a general rule. Partly because when the time save is that small, it's really hard to know which way is faster without consulting recorded footage, something that I don't think should be required for basic pathing. This actually happens a few times. Some of those forks in the road don't yield a significant time save and are more just about getting some different scenery. Do I homing attack these enemies for the hoop above or stomp below? Well, they're like 1 second apart from each other, so it almost doesn't matter, except it does because I'm a stubborn maniac. Stolen Valley picks up the slack. I've already explained how great the presentation is. There's even a construction worker on the road trying to fix his forklift. Are you okay? Need a hand or... Oh, I think he's beyond my reach. Well, the least I can do is help out. Sonic, how are you? The amount of new content added to such a bare-bones level is really impressive. Lost Interest Valley was another big offender in the boost to win category. It was a straight line where you jumped once, typical 2D, then another straight line where you have your choice of left or right. Kinda freaking sucks when you spell it out like that. And it's not like you're doing anything crazy in Overclocked, there's just more. Instead of only jumping one time in 3D, you do it a few times alongside air boosting, quick stepping, sliding, split-second homing attack shortcuts. The bridge assets get used more often, the camera angles and sense of direction are more varied, and a giant deactivated robot falls on you at the end. What is it, Wednesday already? Freight Frenzy is a fleshed-out spaceport, which was another really lame straight-line simulator where the background was more entertaining than the foreground. By golly, doesn't that just say it all? And to be brutally honest, it's not much better here. Well, okay, it is a lot better, but the bar was so low that this much improvement can only be average at best. A lot of my grief comes down to the custom character itself. The gameplay is identical to Sonic, only no boosting, worse control, and a delayed homing attack. So, worse in just about every way. Who hired this guy? The only trade-off is getting to use Wispins, which are fine, but not a replacement for everything else. A big part of the boost formula's appeal is boosting, so when you take that away but still drop me in boost tier level design, it's gonna feel amiss. It's gonna make me walk down the street in a hoodie with Breaking Benjamin on shuffle. Thankfully, I still have my hotfixes. The Drill Wispin can help act like a boost in those linear running sections, and an air boost for essential shortcutting. Some even feel tailor-made for it, like instead of hitting this second grapple point, you can charge up a drill dash and it takes you into this pipe perfectly. You used to only want the flamethrower because it was the most efficient at clearing hordes of enemies. That went for real life too, but since Overclocked does away with nearly all pointless combat, the other types don't feel as underpowered. Combine that with all the passive stat variants already unlocked in the menu so I can get my max speed after stomping effect, play as the bird to have a double jump, and the custom hero gets a lot closer to how Sonic plays. They're still my least favorite levels, but I don't hate them. Freight Frenzy is alright in my book. While it's true there is a lot of rail grinding that starts to blend together, one section really surprised me because depending on which rail you finish on, you'll be taken to a different area afterwards. The right side is the fastest, throwing you directly into 2D, the middle puts you in a 3D section prior to it, and the left takes you into the background of the other pathway. I knew it looked like a playable section back there, but I had no idea how to reach it. I still think there is a lot of potential left on the table here for more platforming though, like riding on moving trains, and maybe you have to slide under incoming beams or cranes, and if you're fast enough, you can catch up to the cargo, but if you miss it, you'll lose access to a shortcut, detouring you to a different section entirely. That could have worked really well as an exciting set piece with a gameplay purpose. The freight yard too is brimming with potential for jumping on and off boxes, going into little cubbies instead of just one little red ring area off to the side. It's a freaking tease. Also, the ending can glitch out. Normally the train is supposed to crash behind you, but sometimes it just runs you over. Who's driving this? City Siege I already described pretty thoroughly, but it's an accurate showcase of what Overclocked is made of. Pure adrenaline, constant inputs, and wow, I should not have done that. You are jumping, sliding, air boosting, quick stepping, split-second homing attacking, going on rails, going on the wall, picking lanes, running on water. There's a lot happening, even if still falling into that binary philosophy. Actually, that fork in the road where you can go on the wall or off the rails is a great demonstration of how diverse the split pathways can be. Going up takes you to these other rails where you do a little jumping, a little sliding, hey. But going down sends you into a completely new quick stepping section. A large gap with hazards preceding it, and a similar pit later on where you homing attack sprouts of water that is all otherwise skipped over. Again, I think there could have been a lot more platforming involving these water mains, some more open spaces for even more branching paths, less reliance on needing to immediately react when turning a corner, and maybe let the Navy know they've been living a lie. But as an evolution of Sunset Heights, it's pretty dang good. It makes that level feel like an alpha build. I can't even look at this anymore. However, there is a bug where you can bonk into the wall and lose your boost. Casually, it's whatever, but when speedrunning, it did force me to reset like 8 or 9 different runs, which is infuriating, so I figured I'd mention it. Same thing with this lip here on the stairs. I'd go to jump, and the boost would just cancel, and it sucks. I hate it. Eclipse Forest is the first tag team stage, another one I described in pretty good detail before. It's lighter on the memorization and more about reaction time, revolving around gimmicks that apply to the environment. A quick stepping section with tree trunks in the way instead of spikes, rail grinding on branches that quickly curve around, giving you minimal but still enough time to dodge, except for this backwards one. How does this keep happening? And the bouncy vines that fundamentally behave like a normal spring, but we're in a forest, so why not spice it up? Halfway in, a nearby soldier calls for help because somebody didn't pass boating school. So you plow through the robots, keeping them at bay, saving your troop. Another great example of how Overclocked tries to make the world feel alive. I'm surprised there weren't more moments like this. There's potential to incorporate this much deeper into the gameplay, like maybe a hidden soldier off the beaten path who's cornered by robots, but if you destroy them, he gives you a spring that takes you to an area otherwise inaccessible. Something simple that you could do along the way without breaking the flow or boiling down to what is essentially a QTE without the prompt. The big surprise in this level, aside from air boosting like an idiot, is that if you take the bottom path very early on, there's like a full minute of original content that you skip with the shortcut. There's quick stepping, I say that like it's a new thing, more vine bouncing, another upper branch that puts you onto rails you would never see, and a lengthy 2D section where you go from right to left, layered with a bunch of its own shortcuts. It almost feels like a different stage. I'm impressed by how much effort was put into something that isn't even mandatory. I kind of wish it was. Instead, I'm over here trapped in a constant state of Geronimo. Jungle Inferno builds upon these same forest mechanics, only now the vines have turned evil, causing damage on impact. I like that you actually jump over things here. That's somehow been an underrated feature. We get a taste of automatic drifting with obstacles in the way this time, and a freefall section at the end, which we don't see too often. A lot more air boosting too, moments where you're flung up and you gotta basketball yourself into the hoop. Usually it's some type of fork in the road where you can pick left or right. It's another solid stage where you're doing a lot pretty quickly. Sometimes a little too quick. However, it is strangely lacking in fire hazards considering the premise, and the final quick stepping at the end is a lot less unique than the previous levels. Stage 2 had us dodging trains, Stage 3 a Perfect Chaos callback, Stage 4 a Sonic 3 callback with somehow more firepower than the fire level. What the? But then Stage 5 rolls around with more vines like in the beginning, with the only difference being that you need to jump over these. In fact, the one in the beginning was a little more challenging because there was a bottomless pit. This is just a copy and paste job. They could have done better here. Maybe bring back the snake, but it's on fire and we can actually control ourselves on it, ending on a big spectacle. Would be a good way to one-up the Frontier's wyvern chase. Or have the vines be a continuous threat from start to finish where they grow in real time to try and grab you, or become an obstacle for you to dodge. There could even be a harmless variant that you grind on to reach different areas like in Frog Forest, or a Wispin that can burn them away. Bring back the Aqua Road water slides. I can't be the only one who liked it. Okay, I know I am. Dead Atmosphere is the second Avatar-only level taking place inside the Death Egg Overtop Prison Hall. It's got that Spider-Man 2000 fog everywhere and falling debris as it caves in on itself. I remember my first 9 to 5. Sadly, while not by a landslide or anything, this might be the weakest one for me. It's the most Forces-esque of them all, just stretched out to a decent length, and that's only because they've packed it with quick-stepping and auto-drifting. Good heavens. The first 40 seconds have you doing the most basic sidestepping. A shortcut that you couldn't possibly miss from how slow you're moving. Auto-drifting, a big empty stretch leading into more drifting with nothing in your way, regular homing attacks until finally they give you some obstacles to avoid and a ramp to steer onto. The drill can help speed this up, but man, what a boring start. This is 4 levels after Freight Frenzy and it doesn't feel any more advanced. Even the branching paths take the most short-lived formulaic approach. Do I home in across these enemies that send me me forward, or do I use burst to get in this hoop that sends me to the exact same spot, only it's actually slower to take? To its credit, there is a secret drill tube underneath that requires you to take one of the bottom routes, which is kind of sneaky and different, but counterpoint, I'm already upset. Every shortcut in 3D here is a choice of straight or up. We don't even get the left and right anymore. The most elaborate it gets is carefully steering onto a dash pad. Now, I think these drifting sections are perfectly acceptable filler content on their own. There's just not enough main stuff to offset it, and so it comes off as a gimmick that never goes anywhere. Also, don't drift into the corner because you can get stuck and these robots will heckle you.
Hey, look at this idiot.
The 2D is fine. There's a decent drill shortcut and it's got some layers to it. The bottom path is actually more fun since there's a semblance of platforming. Seriously, there's good stuff down here that you never see, like an enemy that shoots you from the background. Freaking awesome. But he only does it one time and then flies off like he's embarrassed he couldn't hit you. This could have been a recurring element throughout the whole stage instead of a borderline Easter egg. Same thing with the whole pushing you into the foreground motif. That's such a cool change up, yet they treat it like a punishment for when you fall down. The quick step in the middle is pretty fun, I'll admit. The perspective of the walls going by makes it feel fast for once, and instead of just dodging things in the typical 3-lane structure, you're trying to stay on top and collect items away from the deadly pit below you. I think more quick stepping sections could benefit from a sense of scale like this. Maybe some better collision right here too. Then you run forward again, plow through some enemies, I don't know, whatever. Followed by an admittedly satisfying jump to take the high road where you drift around lasers without a railing on the side to save you, not a bad escalation. You even get a red ring for it, and how did I miss that? Again though, I think the bottom path is more fun here. There's still drifting, a pit to jump over, and oh my gosh. A semi-open area with an attempt at platforming? Don't tease me like that now! The rail grinding set piece at the end is pretty cool like I mentioned. It's the only one where you might actually get hit. Maybe even twice! Oh shoot. Now I gotta hop around like a funny man. A 30-second challenge where you dodge lasers, electrical beams, and then both at the same time. It even gets its own music. Ending on a big explosion as we mourn the loss of our friend. It's a memorable send-off. The problem I have is that the whole level was tiptoeing around its subject matter for so long that I don't feel like I got to see much of it in action at its best. Even this big combination assault is only 4 seconds with 2 laser attacks. Like, come on, they could have thrown way more at us. All I'm doing is moving to the side and then right back to the middle, move to the side, back to the middle. That's it. That's the hard part. What do you think I am, bad? Yes. I also would have liked it if the background towers were a central part of the level design. There's only one section where you swing on a crane and land on some, once again a lower path exclusive, and it's all automated with homing attacks anyway, barely lasting 5 seconds. Give me some null space architecture to jump around on. I'm a big boy, I swear. Imagine if the robots destroying all the towers in the background was a playable set piece. Jumping across falling buildings, collapsing platforms giving way underneath you like the end of Green Forest. That would be an amazing finale, and a heck of a lot more unique than press left and right again. Or just open the stage up to take you on all these crazy pathways. The Death Egg is massive. There's so much we could explore, and yet we only go in a straight line the whole time. I get it, it's a fan project, but man, I got dreams too. I still like this ending, by the way. I was pretty wide-eyed when it first happened. I just think we can do better. Also, the first half is kind of dumb and lame, and I hate it. Now, while Dead Atmosphere may have been a bit of a letdown for me, what comes after it is a very different story. Are you ready for this? Are you ready for— Meteor Rush blew me away. This doesn't just solo everything in Forces, but a lot of colors, Unleashed, and even Generations to an extent. I'd play this over Green Hill, maybe Chemical Plant too. If you aren't gonna put the finale in the Eggman Empire Fortress, then outer space is where you go. Egggate was the point in the original that got many people excited. The music was hype, it looked like Final Rush, and had the illusion of being bigger than it really was. A promise of greater things to come, or in this case, a lie. But Meteor Rush is no illusion. This stage is stacked. It has so much going on. Sonic's entire moveset is put to the test. I think the only mechanic that doesn't return is skydiving. Other than that, it is 3.5 minutes of constant action, with the background airship battle taken from Mortar Canyon. The asteroids are now an interactive homing target instead of a decoration, which is so smart, once again assimilating the environment into the gameplay. And a lot of times, you can skip over them with a clever jump or air boost. Rail grinding always has spikes or gaps to make you dodge, sometimes you even have to dodge the coating. Now that's innovative. Quick stepping is only used at the very end, and while the pathways may still be linear, it does not feel like a straight line anymore. You are going in all sorts of different directions, always turning a bend, orbiting around asteroids, climbing way up high, crashing back down, and sifting through layers upon layers of shortcuts. Let me take you on a little walkthrough, okay? This isn't optional, we're doing it. 30 seconds in, fork in the road. 2 different routes. On the main path, you can slide under to do some safe homing attacks like a little string bean, or drill above and boost over the whole thing. Going right takes you the long way around with a bit of drifting and a red ring before launching you into the same area. Run forward here and you'll eventually hit a 2D section with its own unique shortcuts, ending up at the bottom floor of the interior. Jump on the rail instead and it takes you around a large asteroid, landing in front of an upper and lower path. Go down and you'll do some rail grinding with a mini grapple point shortcut, taking you on a quick roller coaster ride until yet another branch in the path reveals itself. Go right and you'll skip part of that 2D section and be flung just below the main floor. Go left and you'll embark on a slight roundabout detour to grab a red ring, spitting you out on the main floor. Rewind back to that top route though, and we go much higher with a couple of cool air boosts, more space to move around, and a different red ring sending us to that same main floor in record time. Rail grind for a bit here and we have another choice of left or right. Right side takes you into a mini asteroid field, some grinding into the mid path of the main 2D section, but if you home in on this chain of asteroids, it leads to the top path. Go left at that divide instead and you'll do some drifting around flaming craters, I love that I can say that, ending up at the same top route with a bunch of its own little shortcuts strewn about like this tight air boost. Some more 2D afterwards where you can go right or down, kind of the same difference though, and it's very brief. Grind out of there and we're hit with a three-way choice. Left taking you to a familiar piece of geometry, which goes to show how buried the original content is under the mountain of new stuff. It's tear-jerking, really. This is just a quick detour for another red ring though. The right side takes you to a road with a burst cannon that somehow ended up being slower than staying on the bottom. What the heck, guys? But both bring you to this line of asteroids with another three-way split. How is it still going? The line is in constant rotation, so depending on when you start, you'll be placed in front of a different route, which is possibly the most unique take on the standard alternate path structure. Brilliant idea. Straight takes you the long way around with a bunch of boosting in the final red ring. Left takes you to a midsection, and right takes you up top to these rails above that midsection, all converging on the same checkpoint. Back to the first set of rails though, the right side is actually the fastest, spitting you out in front of that same line. But even faster, you may have missed it, there's another rail above the one you're on that brings you to this airborne section connecting to those same rails from the other right path. This level is huge, man. So much intersection, so many options. This is borderline choose-your-own-adventure platforming. Can we coin that as a genre? I am so impressed with Meteor Rush. The scale, runtime, spectacle, layers of content, I think they outdid themselves. This level is so good, it makes me feel like I'm not doing enough. As a person, the only thing that disappointed me about this otherwise magnificent experience was the ending. First of all, the quick stepping can still bug out and lock your inputs, or worse, it registers but barely moves me so I still get hit. This happened a lot, consistently in fact. And 1, 2, 3, freeze! Also, like I said before, I think wide open spaces with platforming would have been an awesome addition here, especially considering the environment. Like a big asteroid field sending you in different directions, hopping across pieces of debris. There's potential. The ending set piece, however, while very exciting and probably my favorite, sending you straight down through an artillery of ships and explosions, is still ultimately just another quick-stepping rail minigame that we've seen in every other stage. It's not even more difficult. I actually think the avatars was a bit trickier. At the end of Egggate, we were treated to one of the game's biggest teases, jumping onto one of the background ships, only for it to be a QuickTime event. Everyone agreed that it should have been a playable set piece. So when I saw those same ships fly into frame, I thought Overclocked was gonna do that and was pretty bummed out when nothing came of it. I think that would have elevated its impact to an even higher status and helped separate it from all the other identical sequences. I mean, just imagine hitching a ride on a spaceship and crashing it into others, akin to riding Knight's Shield in Frontiers. It'd be freaking awesome, no doubt. You're doubting, aren't you? Get over here, I'll teach you to doubt. Wishful thinking aside, Meteor Rush is still a blast through and through. That retroactively makes all the previous levels feel worse. I still have fun with them, of course, but if they were like this, game over. I'm not leaving my house. After all this, we finally get our tag team boss fight against Infinite and Neo Metal. It plays out like a level, taking you through a bunch of other forces' territories that weren't used, like the beginning of Terminal Velocity, Red Gate Bridge, and the Metropolis. Each section has 1 or 2 shortcuts for the red rings, helping to give it some extra depth that a boss fight normally wouldn't have. There are a lot of hazards to avoid, precise air boosting that feels like playing Operation on a jet ski, and a nearly impossible S rank unless you play as the wolf to attract rings because you need like like 700 for some reason. It's ridiculous. Some visibility issues here and there. I couldn't decipher that there was a pit coming. Aw, dang it! But it's a good fight, even if it technically isn't one. Maybe they could have added a final phase that functions like a real boss, because ending on a double boost, while appropriate, kind of falls on deaf ears gameplay-wise. We don't even get a big quick-stepping set piece at the end, which is pretty ironic. Instead, we dive into the reactor that you can get stuck in somehow. The sound effects all play and the music changes, but you cannot move and must reset. In an instant, I went from breaking a record to breaking my desk. It's impressive, really. What was weird, though, is that when it happened to me, I was still able to boost, so I broke free into this dark blue void that you could barely see before. I half expected Solaris to show up, and now I can't stop thinking about how cool of a supersonic boss arena this would be. I know it's a tired trope, but what if I told you I couldn't care less? Also, the background starts filling with crazy, dreamlike debris as the battle goes on, and I think building some zany level design around that concept would have been really cool. Messing with the perspective, making things appear and disappear. The Force's infinite fights all created illusions anytime you took damage, so now that the Phantom Ruby is overclocked, I'm surprised we didn't go further into those fantasy elements. So while still pretty good and definitely one of the better Sonic boss encounters in the last decade, like many other things here, there's room to grow. Unfortunately, this is where we get to my one and only major complaint about Overclocked as a whole. That's the end. 8 levels, 1 boss, final cutscene, credits, and then back to reality. No. No, I need more. The game peaked with Meteor Rush. You can't give me perfection then take it all away. I felt like we were just getting started. In the beginning, I said that the story felt anticlimactic, like there was a big chunk missing in the middle and then suddenly ends, and the gameplay is no different. The contrast between these two final levels is massive. The steady maintaining of pretty good status, and then is cataclysmically one-sided. It's the same feeling I get playing regular Forces. All of a sudden, wait, it's getting good, and then it's over. But then I remembered, hang on a sec. Episode Metal, the prologue story. I hadn't played it yet because I figured it was like the Shadow DLC with hard mode versions of previous levels that I'd save until after I was better. Maybe this would be the second half to complete the adventure and leave me satisfied. This is where we play Lost Citadel and see Metal salvage the Phantom Ruby. Great start. What's next? No. Please, no. 1 level. Episode Metal is 1 level. Yeah, I should have played that first. Wow. I mean, my bad, I guess, but come on, the dang thing's got its own menu, music. I expected a little more than 1 stage, and the shortest one at that. I thought they were gonna flip the script and rectify how half-baked Episode Shadow was, with a campaign that could rival the main story, or at least some of it. Heck, they could have touched up Episode Shadow too, give him his guns and call it Overclocked. I would have accepted that. Look, I'm sure I wouldn't feel nearly as bad right now if I had played it first. That's definitely a big component, and to their credit, they did release a trailer with a description that said 1 prequel story level, but man, I felt so let down. Not only from the loss of potential and incongruous content, but it was this moment when I also realized how many other things we didn't get to see either. There's only 1 level in the Eggman Empire Fortress, this massive original environment, and we don't explore it any farther. It's mostly just Mortar Canyon again, with 1 2D section in the beginning. Every other stage gets these huge extensions with new assets and pathways, but I guess that wasn't part of the vision here. Same with the city, only 1 level, which is weird because it's kind of the Force's locale. It's on the box art, the CGI reveal trailer, first gameplay showcase, the playable demo had it, but no, instead the Lost World Forest gets 2 levels dedicated to it. Yes, that's what I wanted! I know 1's on fire, it's cool, it's different, I just found that to be an odd choice. I'm not mad, okay? I'm not. What I can't forgive, though, is Metropolis not getting a full level. That area has so much potential. It's a gorgeous sky-high cityscape of interconnected roadways, and all we get is a small section in the boss where you can't even appreciate its beauty because everything's freaking purple. If you couldn't fit it into the main story, then put it in Metals. Have him go through all these extra places. Maybe the Metropolis is on the way to the Eggman Empire. And after we get the Ruby, we climb the tower to look for Infinite, or play the level backwards with enhanced abilities using the Ruby. Go back to the city, maybe? I don't know, just please. Also, what happened to Null Space? If you were to take a poll from casuals to burnt-out, jaded veterans, a majority would say that Null Space was the biggest waste of potential in regards to new ideas. It was a void of nothingness with ethereal music, limitless possibilities, and all you did was double boost out of it immediately after being trapped. The buzzkill was universal. This was the perfect opportunity to redeem that. The rookie even gets trapped in it again, which is how he ends up on the death egg. This is a major plot point, and it's all done off screen. We could have had a full level showing how he escaped, or at least what he was doing in there. Sadly, this is where the harsh reality sets in that Overclocked is not meant to be a fix Sonic Forces mod, where every level gets remade and all of our dreams come true. I wish it was, but that's simply way too much work. What we do have is a short proof-of-concept level pack that gives you a taste of what the original game could have been like. And while I do think that this small package is better than the entirety of Forces, it's not the resounding yes I want it to be because it's 30 minutes of gameplay, man. This is half of Colors. As a fan project, yes, it is extremely impressive and everyone involved should be proud of what they made. But as a product that I consumed on its own, there was not enough content to make it feel like a complete experience. If Forces was great and this mod was just more levels that I could add to the pile, we'd be fine. But it wasn't. This is its own entity that I will be loading up instead of the regular game, and so my brain can't help but judge it as one. Maybe if every stage was as good as Meteor Rush, I'd be singing a different tune, but as is, it just didn't feel like enough for me. Now, there is some bonus content you can indulge in, like collecting all the red rings, which are in pretty clever locations. They're not often handed out for free, so it's more about pathway selection. If you're missing one and can't find it, take a different route, and odds are that'll do the trick. There was only one I had to look up because it blends into the red background. Who the heck put that there? The level before it has the same thing, and it's not much better even though it's blue. Just can't see at the speed of light. After those, we have the returning bingo number rings yet again, and they're fine, like always. A lot of times they're on a lower path, making you play parts of a stage you may not have before. Or it'll put you on the top and then snake back down to the bottom, which I thought was a cool change up. Another time they were on the main path, so instead of hunting for them, it was a reactionary objective. Jungle Inferno has you work backwards for a sec and then forwards again because... Wait, actually, yeah, why? Meteor Rush also kind of does this, where you have to turn around to hit an asteroid for a secret rail. It keeps you guessing, never putting them in the same predictable spots every time. And thankfully, the green stands out pretty well, so I didn't have to whip out a magnifying glass every 10 seconds. The only visibility issue I had was at high speeds in Eclipse Forest because the background is made of blue and green shades. I found myself pause buffering on the rails to make sure I didn't miss them, especially because if you do, you get flung into a checkpoint right after and have to restart the whole level if you want to try again, which is just the bomb. I think my major problem with all of these is how disposable they are no matter how you slice it. It's not like rings, shields, or one-ups where I want to collect them every time because they affect the gameplay. These are one and done. I check them off in the menu and then never touch them again. Also, the colors announcer plays when you get them now, but when he says outstanding, you can hear the next button press before the sound clip cuts out and I can't unhear it. It's over. The moon rings are a slight improvement because of the timer aspect. Some of these were kinda difficult, like mini speedruns of level segments. Unfortunately, the visibility issues are exaggerated tenfold by their blinking silver hue. A touch of blue was added, but it was not enough. You are almost guaranteed to fail these on the first try, just so you can learn where they are.
We got him!
I'd recommend not boosting for the best results. The one in the boss, I think, is required to be played like that. With this control, there's no way you can swerve around right. They're much easier to spot from a side-scrolling view, but only 2 levels do that. I often relied on the sound cue to let me know when I got one, which ironically was so buried under the train whistle in Freight Frenzy that I thought I was missing it. I kept killing myself to try again until I knew I couldn't be messing up, so I thought maybe it was a glitch and just carried on. At least I could keep retrying though, because the one in City Siege is diabolical. No joke, this is the hardest thing in the entire mod. You start on rails, super easy, take all the same shortcuts, oh my gosh, it's fun. But then, the last ring requires a very specific air boost. Don't do it right away, double jump, then tap the boost button and release before reaching it. What? Unfortunately, the depth of field is impossible for human beings to gauge, so you end up flinging yourself at different intervals until something sticks and then never return. Now, if you mess it up, you can boost jump backwards into the rainbow ring again before it disappears. But I didn't figure this out until much later. It's just weird to go against the camera in these games. If you fail completely though, and then die to respawn, the checkpoint is after the first 2 moon rings. And at first, I thought you were blocked off and had to restart the whole level, which I did like 8 times, of course. But turns out you can jump over this wall and run backwards. You just have to memorize where the pits are, don't get stuck on the rails, and then try again. Who made this? Also, you have to play a level 3 times to get everything. It's fair enough to need all the red rings before unlocking the other types, keep it a surprise, but you can easily get the bingo and moon rings in the same run. They're always separate from each other, yet the moon rings won't show up until you clear the level with the bingo rings first, forcing a third playthrough at minimum. It's unnecessary padding that Frontiers recognized. Finally, we have S ranks, offering some extra challenge as well, and a more conventional one at that. Getting an S rank in Forces was awful. Because the game was so basic, there was almost no way to fail, which meant the S rank was all but guaranteed even on a first playthrough. You'd have to be really inexperienced to not get it, and even then you'd most certainly end up with an A, maybe a B, which is way too high for someone playing like this. It's not as bad as Frontiers where you can trip over your own shoelaces and still get by, but it's not much better. The ones in Overclocked though? Whew! Pinch my whiskers. Not only do you need to take the fastest route and play it pretty well, you also can't take any damage near the end because you need enough rings to increase your score. I know some people don't like ring bonuses being a factor because they want it to be all about speed, and I think that's a fine way of going about it, but if you want to test the player on all avenues of Sonic's gameplay, then I think needing to learn how to not get hit and grab all the collectible items is perfectly reasonable. In fact, I would say it's a higher level of play. Besides, if you've already learned how to beat a level really fast, then you've probably learned how to not get hit either. Most of these were medium difficulty, nothing too tough or too easy, felt like an even middle ground, when it wasn't, glitching. Only the boss gave me a hard time because I wasn't using the wolf to magnetize enough rings to me. Once I swapped, it was easy. I just don't like how they levitate in front, blocking the view. It's a freaking safety hazard. Completing every S rank will get you new avatar cosmetics, but it's a pretty small list. It's unfortunate that you don't unlock anything for 100% completion. You get these wings for grabbing all the red rings, but nothing for the bingo and moon rings, making them feel even more meaningless. At the very least, it's all optional, so if you just want to play the levels and beat your own time, that's all you need to do, and you'll be getting the most out of what Overclocked has to offer. In true Sonic fashion, though, let's end on the unwavering positivity of the soundtrack. Forces had one of the more mixed OSTs upon release, and part of that was because there was barely any rock, but also due to the synthesizer it used in Sonic's levels. It was kinda scratchy, chalky even. It wasn't the easiest on everyone's ears, and so the new composers have replaced it with a different one. I don't know what it's called, but it's the wham, you'll hear it. Half the songs are remixes and the others fully original. We even get a vocal theme for the boss that goes full on industrial with growling and everything. Frontiers really kicked the door open on that. I wish there were more original songs because they're the ones with all the guitar in it. Combining electronic drums and keyboards with electric guitar seems to be a popular method of making great Sonic music, and this is another entry to add to the pile. That is Sonic Forces Overclocked, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's a pretty fun time. Again, it may not reach the highs of the boost formula, and it's still way too short if you ask me, but the result is far more satisfactory than what the source material gave us. Constant high-speed action, full-length stages, emphasis on reaction time and dodging, great music and art direction, all packaged in some very impressive production value for a fan project. I want to see more. They did release a statement saying that they're going to add more content and features in the next version, but I don't know if that means more levels. Because if they were to, let's say, double the amount of stages to rival Generations, maybe add another boss fight, I think this could stand beside the other boost titles. If not though, you know what? It's still a job well done.
Well, a little anticlimactic, but at the end of the day, a win's a win.
Wow, that's actually a great description for the mod. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, don't forget to check out the next episode whenever I post it, which will probably be soon. Alright. See ya.